Okay, can you please confirm if you are able to see my screen? All right. So today we are going to be looking at cumulative sum with the help of window functions. And then we'll be looking at cumulative average followed by row manipulations and window functions. Finally, if time permits, we'll be having a look at stored procedures. So, do you guys recall how you did your cumulative sum calculation for each of the months using self join? Do you guys remember? Yes. Okay. So let's visualize that first. So this is the problem statement. For each month, add up the current sales with sales from all the previous months. Do you guys recall this problem statement with this? We did this exact same problem statement using self join. So here's your raw data on the left, and here's your final output that you want on the right. For the first month, you want to add up all the sales values from the previous month along with the current month. But for the first month, there is no previous value. That's why you're just directly printing the current value. For your second month, you want to be adding up the current value along with all the values that come before the second month. So you only have one particular row that comes before your second row, and that has the value of 30 in your sales. So you will add up 30 with 50 to get 80, and so on till the 12th month. So for the 12th month, you will be adding up your 12th month value along with all of the values that came before the 12th month. So when you add up all of these values and you look at your sum that your Google spreadsheet is showing, it's showing 520, and that is what you're printing over here, right? So this is what we did with the help of self join. There's some helping text over here, no previous sales, so that's why 30. For your second month, you want to add up Feb and Jan. So Feb has month number 2, Jan has month number 1. So add up both of those values for your March month, add up March value with Feb value and Jan value, and so on. Okay, let's look at the coding part then. So let's do cumulative sum using window functions. So what is the aggregation that I need to be doing in the window function? Sum. Okay. So select. First, let's look at the table. You got it? Month values and then the sales values, but over here it's in a date format. 2022, first month, first date. Let's write the final query then. Okay, so first question is, how do you print the total sum of the sales values of the entire table against each record? How do you do this? You just simply do select all of my existing columns and then you do a simple sum aggregation, sum of sales, and then you specify the window, right? So I want to have the sum values to be printed against each and every record of the entire table. So I don't want to be doing any partitioning as total sum from sales. So this we have done already. Now, finally, I want to calculate the cumulative sum. So let me just pick this query once again, put it here, and try to make some manipulations over here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce an ordering clause here. I'm going to say order the records by month value. Okay, and then I'm going to change the alias because this is not going to be total sum once I've executed this. So this is cumulative sum now. And do you think we're going to get the desired output that first column, first row is only going to have 30, second row is going to add up 50 with 30 and print 80? That's going to happen. Let's see what's going to happen. Okay, so let's verify the values then. Once again, first row, sales is 30, cumulative sum says 30. Second row, sales is 50, previous sales is 30, add it up to get 80. Third one, sales is 25, previous ones add up to 80. So 80 plus 25 is 105, and that's what you're getting here. And as you just saw in your Google spreadsheet, when you add up all of these, you get 520. So for your final record, you're getting 520 here. Right. So what exactly happened over here? So when you introduced your order by in the window, comma, calculations started including all of your rows previous to current row along with the current row. This is what happened. And if you ask me how that is how this window function works, if you're going to not specify any ordering over here, you're going to be printing the sum for the all of the rows. But when you introduce an ordering over here saying order by month, then it is going to first sort all of your records in ascending order of month. So January 1st, followed by all of your months up until December. It is once it has been ordered, it will start considering all of the records previous to the current row along with the current row. So when you execute this, you should be able to see your cumulative sum. Now that is very easy compared to what you did with the help of your self joins, right? All right. So can we also count number of rows being considered for each calculation? Just to understand key, how many rows are being considered for each calculation, right? For first row, how many rows are we considering? Just one. For second row, how many rows are we considering? We're considering the values from two different rows, the current row itself and the previous one row. For third row, we are considering how many rows? Current row and then two previous rows. For the last row, you're considering the last row along with 11 previous rows, right? So how can I introduce or how can I print that particular information? I can just build up on this. I'll take this and that is already giving me my sum. How about I take this particular syntax, paste it here and replace sum with count. All right, so this has to be given a different name. We'll say count. So now you can make a lot more sense, right? For current rows calculation, how many rows are we considering? The count column is going to give you that information, that only one row is being considered. For second one, two rows are being considered, and so on. Now, this might feel like a little ambiguous. Let's look at a different problem statement and then make more sense out of this. So here's your next problem statement. So can we use row number here? Yes, you can use row number. Here's your next problem statement. And when you look at this, you will be able to better visualize how count is going to help you get the average. So let's see what's happening here. For each month, get the average sales by considering the current sales value and sales from all the previous months. So far we have just done the cumulative sum. What did we do in cumulative sum? We added up current row along with all the previous values. Now it's saying you add up all the values along with the current row, all the previous rows, add them up, and then you divide though whatever is the sum by number of rows being considered to get the cumulative average. Okay, so this is your raw table on the left. This is what you want on the right. You can ignore the cumulative sales and the count values over here. Just look at your cumulative average column for now. And let's see what's happening for your January month. So when you're considering January as your first record, I've just highlighted it with some color. So what do you think is going to be the cumulative average for January? $30 divided by 1. So the sales value for January is just 30 and there is no other record previous to January. So it's just going to do 30 divided by number of rows being considered. And the number of rows being considered is 1. So 30 divided by 1 is going to give you your cumulative average as 30. Okay, let's scroll down. We are considering February as the current row now. And now you tell me what should be the cumulative average for February. So when you're considering February, you're just going to add up current rows value, which is 50, along with the previous value, which is 30, and divide the sum by the number of rows being considered. So the sum is going to be 80, which you can see over here with the help of your cumulative sales. Now, if you divide 80 by the number of rows being considered, which is 2, you get cumulative average as 40. Make sense? Right. And so on. You can have a look at your March month. Consider your March as the current row. Exact same thing is happening. You're adding up your current row value with all of the previous rows. That's your cumulative sum, which is 105. And then you're dividing 105 by number of rows being considered, which is 3, and getting the cumulative average as 35. And so on. If you come down till November, you're going to have you're going to be adding all of these sales values, current row, which is November's values, along with all of the other 10 months values that come before November. So the sum is 450. You're going to print 450 here. How many rows are being considered? All of the previous rows, which is 10, along with the current row. So 10 plus 1 is 11. So you're giving your count as 11. And then when you do 450 by 11, you're going to get 40 point something. But since we have not converted the values over here into float, we are just getting the integer value. So it's just printing 40 for you here. And then finally, when you go to December, you're going to be adding up all of the sales values, including December with all of the previous rows. You get the sum as 520, count is 12. So 520 divided by 12 is going to give you somewhere around 43 point something. And since it's not in float data type, you're going to just print the integer value of 43 point something, which is 43. So do you think this particular problem statement makes sense now? And should we move on to the coding part? Okay. So how do you think I can calculate the average, cumulative average? Calculate the cumulative average of sales at each month level, if you want to put it in that way. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to pick up this particular syntax, or how about I type it from scratch, select all of my existing columns. Let me just start, converting this particular date into extracting the month name first. So get the month name from your month column and give it the alias of month. This can be a lot confusing, but I hope it's making sense to you. And then followed by sales. Then you give me the average of sales over the entire table because I am not partitioning. Order the records by month and you give the name of cumulative sales from sales table. So why are we not using row number here? You can use your row number here. I've just put the count function over here just for you to understand how cumulative sales is working. It's going to be considering the current row and all the previous rows exactly like how count is working. Count is counting the current row along with all the previous rows, right? So that's the analogy that is being shown over here. So this is exactly what we just saw in the group Google spreadsheet. Now the question was, why are we not getting average in decimals? So we can address that issue as well. So how do I do this? Convert. Okay. So what should I convert here? Convert or cast, whatever, but what should I convert or cast? Convert the sales before average. Before average or inside average? Inside average. Okay, so you guys go back home and then try doing outside average. Let's do it inside average for now. So convert, you can use cast as well. Do not ask me why are you not using cast? Why are you using convert here? Well, convert float sales and then put in another bracket over here over order by month as cumulative sales. And there you go. Now you tell me, is all of this making sense up until now? Okay. So that was getting your cumulative sum and your cumulative average. Let's pick up a problem statement in which we can make some more manipulations here. So problem statement is calculate the cumulative sum of total order amount for the orders placed by each customer. So this data is stored in my orders table, right? So reading orders. All right, so I have some customer ID over here and I have some total order amount over here. So let's start writing the query then finally. So select all of my existing columns and then you do some summing up of total order amount and then over. So am I dividing the entire table into smaller windows or not? Yes. And what is the similarity in all of those smaller windows? Read the problem statement, that should help you out. Customer ID. Okay. Should I just put customer ID or am I missing some syntax over here? I'm missing the syntax of partition by. Now that I've done some partition by, should I do some ordering or will I get the desired output without the ordering itself? Let me just name it as cumulative sum from orders. What do you think? Am I going to get the desired output? Someone said yes. So let's analyze what's happening. For your customer ID with, so for your customer with ID 57081, this is your window. And you said you do sum of total order amount over partition by customer ID. And you name it as cumulative sale, cumulative sum. So you did your cumulative sum, and you what do you think you're getting over here? You're getting the same value for all of the orders, right? So we are missing something here. So in order to get the cumulative, we want to be introducing an ordering condition here. And what do you think should be the ordering condition? You can either do order ID or you can do the order date. Why can you do by both? Why do you think doing it by order ID or doing it by order date is going to give you the exact same output? This is a very logical question, because if you're considering the first order date, it's going to have to be having some order ID which is lesser than any order ID that is going to be assigned to your future order date, right? That's the logic. So you can either do it by order ID or you can do it by order date. Let's go by order date. I'm going with order date by choice, but you can have a different choice and you can say that I'm going to order it by the order ID. Let's see. Okay, let's consider the first window. What is the question? Cumulative sum of total order amount for the orders placed by each customer. Here's my total order amount. Here's my cumulative sum. Let's look at the values and see what's happening. So 8,034 here for the first order. So 8,034 again, because there's nothing prior to this particular order. When you come to the second row, it's 9,703 point something. So when you add 9,703 point something with your previous record, you're going to get something around 17,000. And that's what you're adding over here. Coming to the third row, add something with 17,000, you're going to get it around 22,000, but there's some extra values over here. So you're getting something around 23,000 and it's making sense, right? The cumulative sum is working just because you've ordered your records on the basis of order date. Now, here comes the question, should you only order by order date and order ID? And should you not order it by anything else? Are you allowed to order it by anything else, or you're like only these two columns can be done? Exactly, it depends on the problem statement, how you want to be ordering your records before starting to calculate the cumulative sum or average. Depends on the problem statement. right? If you're asked to, get your total order amount on the base, your cumulative sum on the basis of some other condition, let's say shipping date or delivery date. For that, you're going to be ordering on the basis of shipping date or delivery date. Okay, so it depends on the problem statement. Now comes the question, are you clear with all of this, what we have just done? We have tried to calculate the cumulative sales for the different months having different sales values. We have tried to calculate the cumulative average for those sales values, and we just had a look at the cumulative sum for all the customers' data that is stored in the orders table. So are you able to follow up until now? Okay, there's some question. What if date is repeated? So now for that particular question, you'll have to revisit the yesterday's class in which we said, if you want a short ordering, you want to be taking care of the repeated values. And how you can take care of the repeated values is by specifying a secondary condition on which you want to be ordering the records having the repeated value. All right, so should we move ahead now? Is the voice clear now? Should we move ahead? All right. Cool. So we will start visualizing something else now. Here's a new problem statement. Look at your problem statement. For each month, add up the current sales with sales from 2 previous months, right? So far we have done, what we have done is we have considered all of the rows that come before our current row along with the current row, right? You can see over here, we are considering all of the previous rows along with the current row. But now the problem statement says along with the current row, you just select 2 previous rows. So this is your raw data on the left. This is your expected output on the right. And let's see what's happening over here. For your current row, which is January, there is no previous record. So you're going to be printing 30. When you come to Feb, there's only one previous row. So you're going to consider both of them and then you're going to add them up, give 80. Now, when you go to March, what is happening? Nothing new is happening because March is having only 2 records previous to it. They're going to sum up 30 with 50, which is 80, and then add 25. We'll give you 105. Nothing special. But what happens when you come to April? So when you are coming to April, you're considering only the values from April, March, and Feb, and you're neglecting Jan. Why? Because the problem statement says only consider values from 2 previous months along with the current month, right? So you can see the highlighted colored rows that only the values from these highlighted rows are being considered. So you can add up 50 with 25 is going to give you 75. And when you add up 75 with 60 is going to give you 135. You're not adding up 30 over here to give you 165. And what happens when you go to December? You're going to be considering all the values from December, November, and October, and you're going to neglect all of the values that come previous to October because the problem statement says only consider rows, only consider the 2 months before the current rows month. That's all, right? So you're going to add up 45 with 65 to give you 110. 110 adding up with 70 is going to give you 180. That's the problem statement. Are you able to make sense of the problem statement? If yes, then let's move to the coding part. So this is a very simple case of manipulating the rows that you want to be considering for the calculation of each and every record. Okay. So what is the problem statement again? For each month, add up the current sales with the sales from 2 previous months. And here's how you can do it. Let's get the date name, month, from the month column as month, followed by sales, followed by sum of sales over, should I partition by anything? Should I partition by anything or should I directly go ahead with ordering? No partition. All right. So let's go ahead with ordering. Order by month. And now here's the new syntax. And this new syntax decides what are the different rows that you're going to be considering along with your current row. So it says rows, and the rows that you're trying to consider for the calculation of your current row has to be between 2 preceding and the current row itself. As required. Okay, so this is going to be a 3-day rolling sum. Not 3-day, 3-month rolling sum from sales. Let's make some sense. First row, sales value is 30. No rows previous to the first row, the 3-month rolling sum is going to print 30. Second row, there's only one row previous to this, so 50 plus 30 is 80. Third row, yes, we have 2 previous rows, so 30 plus 50 is 80, plus 25 is 105. When you come to your fourth row, you're going to be considering only the second, third, and the fourth rows because condition says consider 2 months prior to the current row along with the current row. You're going to be adding up 50 with 25, 75. 75 plus 60 is going to give you 135. So what is the change that we did here? You ordered by your month like you usually do. Then you started specifying the rows that you want to be considering for the calculation of each and every row. For the calculation of each and every row, which all rows are you going to be considering? So by default, when you don't specify the rows condition after your order by, it is going to consider all rows starting from the top till the current row. This is what we have done so far. Without, if we do not have this particular syntax, we are going to be considering the current row along with all of the rows up until the top. But here we are just saying that you just consider 2 rows previous to the current row. So in simple English, it says rows have to be between 2 preceding. Preceding means previous rows, 2 previous rows and the current row. Does that make sense? Plain English syntax, yes. Okay, you can put it in capitals as well. Doesn't really matter. Gets you the same output. Okay, so there's another way in which you can get the exact same output. Syntax 2 to get the same output for the same problem statement, which is select date name, month as month, followed by sales, followed by sum window function, sales over, let me give it in caps, order by month. And then this time, now is when you're going to be looking at a different syntax. So it's not going to be rows followed by between, it's just going to be rows to preceding as 3-month rolling sum from sales. I'm going to give you the exact same output, just a different syntax. 30, 80, 105, 135, 30, 80, 105, 185. What do we have in the bottom? 180, we have 180 in the bottom. So it's going to give you the exact same syntax. So why did this happen? This happened because current row is considered by default when giving the rows condition. Exactly. By default, it is considering the current row. So is this all making sense to you? Okay. So here's next problem statement. You want to get the average of sales from 3 months that come after the current month. Let me check if I can visualize that. Yes, I do have it. So here's a new problem statement. For each month, get the average sales from 3 following months, but do not consider the current month. That's your problem statement. And that's your desired output on the right. Let's try to make some sense. So you can see the count over here is 3 because the problem statement says so, right? Get the average sales from 3 following months, but do not consider the current month. So, okay, it's considering 3 following months. Let's try to do some calculation. 3 following months ka sales, let's highlight them. 50 plus 25 is going to give you 75. Plus a 60 is going to give you 135. And 135, what is the average of these three values? 135 divided by 3, and that's 45. So 45 is getting printed over here. In the same way, when you consider the row of February, you're going to be considering only the next 3 records. So 25 plus 60 is 85, plus 35 is going to give you 120. 120 divided by 3 is going to give you 40. So that's what is going to be printed over here. Let's try to look at that with the help of some colors. Here's your current row, January. Problem statement says, get me the average from 3 future months, but forget about the current month. So that's why I have not highlighted the current row, sales value. I've highlighted the 3 different sales values from the 3 future months. And when I've found the average for that, I'm going to be printing that over here for the current row. Exactly the same for Feb. Do not consider the sales values for Feb. Consider the average sales values from the future 3 months. So these are the 3 months you're going to be considering. And what happens when you come to November? When you come to November, you're going to be searching for 3 sales values that come after November, but you only have 1 over here. 2 other values are not found. I've highlighted 2 new boxes for your reference. We have not found any values over here because December is the last record. So the number of records that are going to be considered for November is 1, because there is only 1 record below November. We do not have 2 missing records. And what is the average for 70? If we're just considering 70, it's going to be 70. So 70 is going to be printed over here. Finally, when you come to December, you're going to be searching for 3 future month ka sales values. December is the last record. You can't find any 3 future month sales values. So that's why number of rows being considered is 0. And since you did not find any average sales values from 3 future months, you're going to be printing null. Make sense? Isn't that very simple? Let's code. If 3 future months are not found, won't it divide by 2? Why is it going to be dividing by 2? Rethink the problem statement. Please repeat not getting. Okay. Look at your problem statement. For each month, get the average sales from 3 following months, but do not consider the current month. Simple English says, forget about the current sales values. Consider sales values from the 3 months that come after your current row. Once you have considered those 3 sales values, print the average of those 3 sales values against my current row. And that's what you're doing here, right? For January, you're considering 3 sales months from the 3 months that are coming after January. You're finding the average of those 3 values, and then you're going to be printing the average value over here. Is that fine now? Okay. So you're seeing, let's put the problem statement again. For each month, get the average sales from the 3 following months, but do not consider the months, the current month, right? So you're saying current row is considered by default when you're giving the rows condition. So how then can I get the desired output for this particular problem statement? What do you think? Give not current value in there, maybe this was it was that simple. But let's see what can be done. Sum sales over order by month. Okay, so here's my logic, right? Specify rows condition to be between one following row and 3 following rows. This is what I want to be specifying over here. Do you think this makes sense? The rows have to be between 1 following and 3 following. So when you say it has to be between 1 following and 3 following, there is no current row that is going to be considered. Okay, question comes, but the current row is by default. But then when you're saying in your between condition that there is no current row, it is not going to be considered, right? Let's see over here. This is your first syntax. You said the rows have to be between two preceding and the current row. So that means you're considering your current row and two previous rows. And when you look at your second syntax, you did not specify any between condition over here. You're just saying consider two preceding rows. So it's saying, okay, I've considered two previous rows. I will also consider the current row because you did not specify any between condition. Right? So now when I am trying to specify between condition, I'm saying you consider those rows that are between one following row and the three following rows. So that is how I'm eliminating the current row entirely out of the picture. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's look at your first syntax then. This is your first syntax. Order by month, and then you're considering the rows between two preceding and the current row, right? You're saying between, right? So between two previous and current row in your first syntax. So current row is getting considered. And over here, you did not specify between. Can you look at this particular syntax? Order by month, rows two preceding. You did not specify between over here. Rows between two preceding and something else. You did not specify that. You directly said rows two preceding. No between, right? So it is going to take two previous rows. And then we said by default, it will also consider current row. Now that you have noted these 2 points, over here I'm saying specify rows condition to be between one following row and three following rows. So now if you try to visualize between one following row and three following rows, where do you see the current row? Does that make sense? Okay, not making sense. Again, this was your first syntax, rows between two preceding and the current row, right? Look at your between. You have specified between over here. So you're giving some range. The rows to be considered have to be in this particular range, two previous rows and the current row. You can see over here, two preceding and the current row. That was your syntax one. In your syntax two, you did not specify any between over here. Rows two preceding, that's all. You did not specify any between. So I've written no between over here. So that's why it is going to take two previous rows and by default, it will also consider the current row. Now that you know these 2 pointers, I'm saying you manipulate your range in such a way that you're not considering the current row at all in that particular range. So you're just considering the first following row and the third following row. And you're saying you consider all the rows that come in this particular range. Consider first following row and third following row, both inclusive. So it is going to consider first row, it is going to consider the second following row, it is also considered the third following row. So when you're saying following, where do you see the current row in the picture? That's the logic. Now, does that make sense? Obviously, the keyword that you're going to be using to consider the following rows is going to be different from preceding. But forget about the keyword for now. Just understand the range that you're trying to define over here. So does that make sense to those who were finding it confusing? Can we also use partition? Yes, you can use it. That means it considered next 1, 2, 3 row. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say over here. Between inside your between condition, you specify the range to be the first following row and the third following row. So whatever rows are coming in this particular range are going to be considered. Okay. So let's code. What's the code going to be? It's going to be starting with rows followed by you're going to write between 1 following and 3 following. So now you will not consider the current row to eliminate it. Exactly. So in your inside your between, you're giving the range. So 1 following and the third following is the range as 3 future months average. We got some output. Now we can add in some counting also here to understand what all or how many rows are getting considered for each row. So how can I add the counting info here? I can just put a comma here. I can say count over, and inside my over, I just need to specify the same condition that I've used for summing the sales values as count. Okay, let's try to make some sense. For your first row, we are saying calculate the average for the next 3 records. So 50 plus 25 plus 60 only. You're not going to add 30. 50 plus 25 is 75 plus 60 is 135. 135 divided by 3 is going to give you. Okay, I think we did sum over here. We did not do average. We were asked to do the average. Yes. Execute. Again, looking at the first row. We're considering only the 3 future month values. 135 divided by the number of rows being considered, which is 3, gives you 45. And so on. Now let's look at the row which has the month of October. How many records are we going to be considering for the calculation of October? 1, 2, or 3? And if you are saying 2, why do you think it is going to be 2? Why do you think we are going to get only 2 for the month of October here? Because we only have 2 future months after October. We do not have any new month of after December over here, which was required in the problem statement. So that's why the counting being considered is 2 in order to get the average here. So you're going to do 65 plus 70 is going to be 135 divided by 2 is going to give you 67.5. But since it's integer, the column is only storing integer values. So that's why you're not considering anything after the decimal. So you're just printing 67 here. And for November, how many records are going to be considered for its calculation? 1, because there's only 1 after November. We do not have any more records after December over here. That's why we just have to make use with whatever is available. So there's only 1 record available after November. That's 1. And what's the average for that? 70 divided by 1 is going to give you 70. Does that make sense? All right. All right. All right. Okay. So, what we just saw at the starting of the class, right? When you order by some condition, right? In the sum window function, it gives you cumulative sum. And what do you mean by cumulative sum? Consider all rows before current row along with current row. That's by default, right? And then we looked at manipulating the number of rows that we want. Then we manipulated number of rows that we want for each. This is what we have done up until now. So now if the problem statement says add up all the sales values from current row till the bottommost row. Now what do you do? This is asking you to do exact opposite of what you did with the cumulative sum. Are you able to make sense out of the problem statement? This is a new problem statement. Add up the sales values from the current row till the bottommost row. Are you able to make some sense out of this? Problem statement at the least? Sum everything from current row till the ending row. Do not consider anything previous to the current row, but consider the current row along with everything that comes bottom to the current row. So what's the syntax then? Select all of my columns and then you do sum sales over order by month and then rows what? Current row and all of the rows that are coming after the current row. So it is going to be, again, we're going to specify the range that we're going to be considering. So the range is between current row and unbounded following. Do not worry about the vocabulary here, just understand what's happening. We'll give it an alias as required sum from sales. Okay, so I'm not really able to make any sense out of this dates, right? Let's do some manipulation. Date name, month as month. Give me some sales. Okay. Okay, so you're getting 520 over here, but the records have been sorted in entirely opposite manner. So how about we sort it in the manner in which we want to see the records, order by month out of month. Okay. You're having the sorting done in calendar order of months now. And then let's make some sense out of the required sum column here. What do you have? 30 as the sales. And it says required sum is 520. Why 520? It is going to be summing up all of the sales values right from your current row up until the bottommost row. So 30 and so on, you're going to add it up till 70 over here, you're going to get 520. And then so on. When you come to November, what all records are you going to be considering to add up? 65 followed by all of the records below November. So 65 plus 70 because that's the only record left. So 65 plus 70, 130, 135. And then when you come to December, that's the last record. You do not have any other record below December. So it's just going to be printing 70 over here. Now that's something. Let's add count info to make more sense out of what's happening. To make more sense out of what all rows are being considered, right? So we'll take this. We'll put it here. We'll introduce a counting function right next to the sum over, and I'll give the exact same condition that I've given in my sum window function. Close that as count. So this will tell you how many rows are being considered. Okay, I have taken this alias from somewhere else. All right. Now let's make some more sense out of the output. First row, sales is 30. How many rows are being considered to get the calculation of required sum for the first row? It's going to be 12. Add up the number of rows that you're going to be considering for the first row, which is current row plus all the rows that come below the current row up until the bottommost row. So that's 12 rows here. So that's why 12 is the count. And you're adding up all of the records from current row till the bottommost row. That's why the sum being printed is 520. And so on till the bottommost row. You have October here, current row plus all the rows being considered below the current row up until the bottommost row. So for the 10th record, which is having the month of October, you only have 3 rows to be considering. So this particular month, we're only going to be considering these 3 months to get the sum. 45 plus 65, 110, plus the 70 is going to give you 180. And the number of rows being considered is 3. So that's why we're giving the count as 3. Make sense? How to skip current in this? You just put after between one following and unbounded following right out. So does that make sense? Okay. Should we move ahead then? Okay. So new problem statement. Print the max sales comparing sales from one previous month, current month, and one following month. This is your problem statement. Does this make sense? Does the problem statement make sense to you? Between one preceding and one following. Exactly. And what is the aggregation function that I'm going to be using here? Maximum of sales. Firstly, you do some ordering. and then you specify the rows that are going to be considered for this particular calculation. Rows are to be between one preceding and one following. So this is your range, one preceding from the current row and one following from the current row. So what are the rows that are being considered? One previous row, the current row, and one following row, because the current row also falls in this particular range. The starting of your range says one previous row, and the ending of your range says one following row. So what is left in the middle? The current row, right? As max amongst 3 months, if you want to say that, from sales. Okay, let's try to make sense out of the output. First row. And let's also add in some counting information so that we can make sense of what all, how many rows are being considered for each and every row. So inside my counting window function, I want to have the same conditions as my max window function. Okay, so first, for the first row, in the problem statement, you said to consider one previous row, the current row, and one following row. But since there's no previous row to the first row, the count is 2. How is the count 2? We're just considering these 2 rows for the first row, right? And now that you have considered these 2 rows, find the maximum of sales out of these 2 rows. And the maximum of sales out of these 2 rows is 50. So that's why we're going to be printing 50 over here for the first row. Now let's come to the second row. For the second row, you want to be considering one previous row, the current row, and one following row. All right. And what's the count for the current row? It is 3, because the information is available for you. One previous row is available, current row is always there, and one following row is also available for you. So the count of rows here is 3. That's why you're counting. You're putting 3 in your count column. Now, what is the max out of the 3 rows that you have identified? The max is again 50. So again, you're going to be printing 50 over here. Let's go to some other row. Let's consider July as a current row. Now we have one previous row, we have one following row. So let's highlight those. So the count is again going to be 3. What is the maximum of sales out of these 3 rows? It's 55. So that's why for the current row, I'm printing 55. Now let's move to the last row. For the last row, we do not have anything following the last row, but we do have one record that is previous to the last row. Fine. So the count is going to be 2. And then we can start comparing the sales values for these 2 records that we have highlighted. Maximum is 70 amongst 60 and 70. So that's why we're going to be printing 70 over here. Make sense? All good? And should we move ahead? Let's move ahead then. Okay. So the question is from one of the students, for April, why are you 16? Why are you printing 60 when something else should be printed? Well, consider one previous row from April, consider your current row, which is April, and then consider one following row, highlight those rows, and then start comparing. The maximum out of these 3 rows is 60, so 60 is going to get printed, right? For May and June, you're saying, consider one previous row, current row, and June, which is the following row. Now you start comparing out of these 3 rows, which is the max, 60, right? So 60 is going to get printed once again. Okay, let's move. How to ignore current year? $1 million question. You cannot do that. You will have to apply some very complicated code which is not allowed in your inbuilt function. So that is why start making some calculations in your mind, start imagining some code, and then it's it's a very complicated code, right? So let's not get into that. But very good question. You should remember that you cannot ignore the current row out of this particular calculation. If you want to be considering some previous rows, you want to be considering some following rows apart from the current row, this particular syntax is not going to help you out. Okay, so what's my next problem statement then? Calculate the minimum total order amount out of 5 different orders for each customer. Amongst 2 previous records, current record, and 2 following records for each customer. This is a problem statement. Does this make sense to you? So it's very simple now, right? Rows between 2 preceding and 2 following, obviously. So this particular information is being carried out in my orders table. Let's try to include some joins over here, right? How about I say select all the columns from orders as A, and then you join customers as B on A dot customer ID equals B dot customer ID. Okay, got something. How about I reduce the number of columns being considered over here? I would say I need my order ID. I would need my customer ID. I would need some first name. Okay, how about we concat this and make it as full name. Got that. And you give me some total order amount also. Once you have given me total order amount, before that you give me some order date also. Okay, let's see what we have. Right, so we did something over here. Now, can I introduce a new window function which can help me get the minimum total order amount amongst 2 previous records, current record, and the 2 following records? Can I do that? How am I going to do that? Minimum total order amount over. Now, should I be dividing this particular table into smaller windows or not? Whenever you come to the over clause, question yourself, should I be dividing the table into smaller windows or not? And then you go back to your question, see if it is answering your question or not. And then you come back to your over clause and then start typing once again. So should I be dividing it or not? Look at your question. This is your problem statement. Now you tell me, should I be dividing the table into smaller windows or not? Still, few students are telling no. Look at your question. Understand your data at hand, you have different customer IDs, right? And your question is saying for each customer, you identify the minimum total order amount amongst so and so records. So now those who are telling no partitioning is required, now do you think partitioning is required? Okay. Partition by customer ID. And now what? Let me put this in a new line. Now, should I do some ordering? Should I do some ordering? Yes or no? Okay. Order by, let's do it by order ID this time. Now that you have done your ordering, you need to specify what all rows are you considering for each and every record. So what do I do for that? I need to tell rows between, then what, to preceding and to following. Okay, this got a lot bigger, so I'll put this in the next line. So get the minimum of total order amount over smaller windows which are having the same customer ID. Inside those smaller windows, order the records by the ascending order of your order ID. Once you have sorted the records in such a manner, then you start considering only the rows that are between two preceding and two following for the calculation of each and every record. And that calculation is minimum of total order amount as minimum amongst 5 orders. Putting it in the next line. Let's see. Ambiguous column name, customer ID. I can put a dot customer ID over here. Execute. Okay, let's make some sense out of the output. Customer ID 57081. Person's name is James Smith. And all of his records of orders have been sorted in ascending order of the order ID. Isn't that what we just did? Order by order ID, yes. Okay, sorted in ascending order of order ID. And once you have done that, what are we doing here? We're trying to get the minimum amongst 5 orders. How about we add some counting information as well over here in order to understand how many rows are being considered for each row. So I'll just replace this with count and I'll give this alias as count here. All right. So for your first order ID, how many rows are being considered? The count says 3, even though in the problem statement we said 5. And why do you think is it 3 over here when it should have been 5? There's no previous rows. That's why it is going to consider the current row and then 2 following rows. So the count is 3. Okay, so let's highlight those rows here. Highlighted. Current row and 2 following rows because there are no 2 previous rows. All right. Now what? Get the minimum amongst those orders that you're considering. So these 3 orders you have considered. What is the minimum amongst these 3 orders? It's 5698. So that's why 5698 has been printed over here. What about your second row? For your second row, we have 2 rows following the second row and we just have 1 row following the second row. So the count is going to be 4 and that's what you can see over here. Now out of these records that we have identified for the second row, what is the minimum? Minimum is again 5698. So that's why 5698 gets printed as we would expect it. Let's move to a different window. So now you can tell me that for this particular guy, Robert Downey Jr., why are we only having the count as 3 when you could have considered these two previous rows as well? It's because this is a completely different window, right? So you're going to be considering this as a new table, and in this particular new table, you do not have any records previous to the first row. So that's why we're just going to be considering the current row and two following rows. So the count is going to be again restarting. Count is going to be 3. And then when you go to the bottom, again, you're going to be saying that for this particular row, there's only one record that comes after this row. So we're going to be considering that one particular record, current row, and two previous records. Highlight them up. Since it's only 4 records, 4 is printed in the count. And then we start comparing the total order amount to get the minimum. Minimum is 3956. 3956 gets printed. So what do you think? Easy stuff? And is it all clear? All clear, yes or no? Okay. All right. So that was everything about your window functions. We're going to move to a new topic called stored procedures. Okay. So what do we have in stored procedures here, right? Suppose you want to be writing multiple queries which have the same structure, but a few variables are changing here and there. Here's a problem statement. You want to write multiple queries which have the same structure, but a few variables changing here and there, right? And if you want, so you want to escape from writing the entire query again and again. Again, and just specify the changing variables value. This is what you want to do. You don't want to write the query again and again. Just have a single line of code and specify the variable value that you want to have for this particular query, and you just execute that single line of code. This is what you want. For such a scenario is when you can make use of stored procedures. Right. So let's pick up the problem statement then. If you want to deal with customers, data of customers who belong to different cities, right? You will be writing the same query and again by just changing the name of the city in the where clause. Does that make sense? You want to be dealing with customers, data of customers who belong to the different cities. But if you wanted, if you only want the data of customers from different cities, you will be writing the query again and again. And in the where clause, you will specify the name of the city that you want the data from, right? So you don't want to write the query again and again and change the name of the city. So let's look at querying the data of customers from New York. Select all the columns from customers where city equals New York. You got it. Now you're saying I want the data of customers because I've got some analysis to do for the customers from New York, let's say some other city. It can be Berlin. So I want the data of customers from Berlin. So again, I'm going to copy this particular select query, and then in my city, I'm just going to change from New York to Berlin. I don't want to do this again and again, but that's what I have right now. And so on, right? You have different cities. You want to be dealing with the data of all of those cities separately. So you will separately keep writing the query again and again and keep changing the name of the city. Right. So instead, what you can do is you can store this entire query as a function with a changing variable. Right. Idea is to store this query as a function with a changing variable. So whatever value that you're going to be assigning to that particular variable is going to be equated with a city, and you can execute that particular function to get the desired output. So here's starting to create a stored procedure, syntax for a stored procedure. So it's very simply writing your base query, select all the columns from customers where city equals, it can be equal or it can be like let's say a certain variable, and I'm going to declare the variable as @city. Now that I've defined my base query, I can go to the top and then write few keywords, create procedure, and then I need to be giving a name to this particular procedure. So I can give city customers. Once I have given the naming, I can go to the next line and then I can declare the variable. Now the variable has to be taking some sort of a data type. Since city is a string value, I can give it the data type of varchar 30 for now, followed by an as in the next line. Giving some spaces for it to make some more sense. So what am I doing here? Create procedure, and then the procedure name has to be city customers. And then I'm declaring a variable @city. The variable is having the data type of varchar 30 as, so the procedure has to have something as this particular base query. Select all the details from the customers table where city like my variable. All right, let's execute this. Successfully completed. Let's see where is it getting stored. Inside my e-commerce, I should have it inside programmability, stored procedures. There you go, city customers is there. Okay. Now, how do I invoke this particular stored procedure, right? How to read the stored procedure or invoke. Basically, invoke the stored procedure to get details of customers from, again, let's say New York. So what's my syntax for that? Execute. Very simple syntax. Execute the stored procedure, right? So what is the name of your procedure? Let's recall it's city customers. And then I can just specify what is the variable. What is the value that the variable is going to be taking? So the variable is going to be taking the value of New York. All right, execute the stored procedure, which is called city customers, and give the variable the value of New York. Select the line, click on execute. and you're going to get an output which is having the details of the customers who belong to the city of New York. Now, how about we do it for Berlin? Exact same syntax. And this time I'm going to put Berlin here. All the details of customers from the city of Berlin gets printed. What if I want from Melbourne? Execute this exact same thing from Melbourne. Got it. All right. So now the question arises, what if you want to write queries with multiple changing variables? Exactly. Can we write two names as for two cities, right? So good question. First of all, let's look at wanting to write queries with multiple changing variables. That's my question. So suppose you want to be getting the details of orders um, that are greater than a particular order amount and that were ordered on some particular weekday, right? That's my question. So what's my base query going to be looking like? I'm going to be getting all of these details from the orders table, right? Because the orders table is containing the total order amount and also the order date. So I can, in my where condition, put the total order amount is greater than a particular variable and also the date name of order date and the date name weekday of order date is like some particular day. So my base query is going to be looking like select all of my columns and then you do some date name, weekday, order date as weekday from orders where total order amount is greater than or equal to. Okay, we have given greater than a particular order amount, right? So it's going to be only greater than, and then we can start specifying our variable name that we're going to be declaring in the stored procedure where total order amount is greater than this particular variable. And also the second condition being date name, weekday, order date has to be like a different variable altogether. So this is my base query. And now I can write my syntax, create procedure, followed by giving it a name. What is the name? Orders on a particular weekday procedure as. Is this query complete or am I missing something? Variable names, right? So after my procedure name, I can just put in the variables. Okay. Order amount and weekday. Now, do you think, is it complete? No, it's not complete because we also need to be assigning a data type. So the order amount for you is in float, and your weekday is a string value. So we can put in bracket 10, and that should be executable. Let's refresh. Orders weekday procedure. All right. Now let's try to invoke this particular procedure, right? We have details of orders that were greater than a particular amount. Let's say that were greater than 80,000 in order amount, and that were ordered on a Thursday. Okay. So now, how do I invoke this? Execute name of the procedure, which is orders weekday procedure, followed by giving the values to your variables that you have assigned while creating the stored procedure. So what are the values? First value has to be what? What is the first value? 80,000. And what's the second value? You can look at your stored procedure over here. And then you can tell me what should be the second value that I need to be specifying over here. Someone says Monday, even though in the problem statement it says Thursday. Okay. Will this work? Oh, got it. You can also put it inside single quotes. All right. Let's look at your order date. All of the, sorry, the total order amount, all of the records are having total order amount greater than 80,000, and the weekday is Thursday. Okay, next problem statement. Let's give some different values now to this particular. Can we use equals instead of like in our weekday vehicles? Yes, you can do that. Okay, let's invoke the same procedure, but with different values now. Greater than 90,000 that were ordered on Monday. So what do you think I should be doing here? How many variables can be added? As many as you can define. So execute. So now we're going to be looking at three different ways in which you can, execute your stored procedure. Different ways. Okay, which is the first one? Okay, we just saw, right? Execute. And then what's the name? Orders weekly procedure followed by the two different variable values. What are the values for this particular problem statement? 90,000 and Monday. Got it. Number 2. Okay, this is only giving me one row, right? How about I change the problem statement to 60,000? Maybe we can get some more rows. Okay, all right, we have more orders now. What is the second way? It is just replace your execute with exec. Just put exec over here. It's going to give you the exact same thing. Got it. Number 3. Here I can do exec orders weekday procedure, and then I can put in at the rate the order amount has to be equal to 60,000. And then the weekday variable has to be equal to Monday. That's my third method. What else can we do? Fourth method is just replacing your exec over here with execute. You just do execute over here, you'll get the same output. Okay, 4 different methods. It does not matter if you're trying to specify that, okay, this particular variable is going to be equal to this. If you just remember the order in which the variables were assigned in the first place, you can just put in the values directly. Otherwise, if you want to make some more sense out of your query, you can mention the variable names that this particular variable is being equated to whatever value that was assigned to you in your problem statement. Okay, we'll look at two different things, two more things that we can do on sort procedures, and then we'll call it a day. How can we alter a sort procedure? Modify. Right. So suppose you want to be modifying the query that is inside your sort procedure to print all the records from the orders table, which are greater than a certain input. All right, let's change the base query entirely, right? How about we print the orders information along with the payment type and also the shipper information for all the orders where the orders are greater than a particular order amount, the payment type is equivalent to some payment type, and your shipper who shipped those orders is having some particular shipper ID. Let's write down the problem statement. So how many variables am I going to be defining over here in this particular problem statement? 3. Okay. So I can either create a new procedure or I can just say that, okay, my previous procedure has become redundant. I want to make some modifications to the previous procedure, and then I'm good to go. So what's my base query going to be look like? Select all of my columns from orders as A, Then you join the payments info. Payments as B on what condition? A dot payment ID equals B dot payment ID. Then you again join some shipper info on, let's give it an alias as C on A dot shipper ID equals C dot shipper ID. And now I can start giving my where condition, where the total order amount has to be greater than a particular variable order amount. And then I'm saying, and the payment ID has to be equivalent to some particular ID followed by, okay, this is payment ID followed by my shipper ID has to be equivalent to some particular shipper ID. All right. And I also want to be ordering my records on some basis now. Let's order it on order date basis. Now that I've defined my base query, I can write the syntax to modify this particular stored procedure. And the syntax is alter procedure. Which was the procedure again? Okay, it was orders weekday procedure. And then I can define the variables once again. Variables are order amount. Order amount is in float, followed by, what is the second variable? It can take the data type of integer, and then my shipper ID can also take the data type of integer, followed by as. Let's execute. Incorrect syntax near order date. Okay. So firstly, we need to identify that payment ID is being taken from two different tables. So we need to specify from which table are we taking this. We can take it from B table. Shipper ID is again being called as ambiguous. So we can specify from which table we are taking it. We'll take it from C table. And over here, we missed a by. So order by order date. Now let's execute. Successfully, we have modified the stored procedure. All right. Now let's invoke this particular stored procedure. Okay, so let's say the problem statement is give the details of orders greater than 70,000 and order amount, and shipped by shipper with ID equals 3, add payment method with payment ID equals 4. This is my problem statement. So how do I invoke this stored procedure now? I'm going to do exec orders weekday procedure, and then I can specify the values. 70,000, which was the second variable. Payment ID over here being given is 4, and then the shipper ID is 3. Let's see. And there you go. shipper ID is 3, payment ID being used is 4, and the total order amount is greater than 70,000. Makes sense. Finally, once I'm done with my stored procedure, how do I get rid of the stored procedure? Simply you do drop procedure followed by the name of the procedure, which is orders weekday procedure. Okay, so if I am able to, let's see if I'm again able to invoke the same stored procedure. If I've deleted it, says could not find the procedure because we have deleted it permanently. All right, so that was it from my side for this particular class. Do you have any questions or is it all clear for you? Whatever was delivered in this particular class? That was everything about your stored procedures. We had a look at how you can manipulate your window functions to calculate cumulative sum, cumulative average, followed by manipulating the rows that have been considered in order to get the calculation for that particular problem statement. We looked at reverse cumulative sum. We looked at getting all the records before the current row, along with the current row. We looked at considering a few rows before the current row, along with the current row, and a few rows after the current row. We also looked at excluding the current row to just get the records from following rows or from the previous rows. Was everything clear? Are we all good? All right. So I think it's time for your doubt session. I'll not take any further of your time, and I'll see you all tomorrow. I'll give you some nice questions to practice for your assignment. And if you have any questions, as usual, please put in the Slack channels. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.